Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We're trying to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good afternoon and welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 4 o'clock. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The race for Prime Minister is heating up, with the International Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt the latest to announce her leadership bid. 9 MPs are now in the running, with Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi and Transport Secretary Grant Shapps putting their names forward yesterday. They were joined by former Health Secretaries Jeremy Hunt and Sajid Javid, who've both promised to cut corporation tax. Earlier, Mr Hunt explained why he's throwing his hat in the ring.
Mr Hunt, what made you join the race?
Because I want to do a great job for my country, that's why. And the sun is shining.
How are you going to unite the country?
Well, sort out our big economic and international problems.
He's also spoken to the BBC's Sunday morning programme.
It is because the two biggest challenges we face as a country now are the international crisis in Ukraine and an economy teetering on the brink of recession. And I am the experienced Foreign Secretary who is also an entrepreneur who will get the economy going. And I also recognise that the leader of a political party has to win elections, and that means a broad appeal. So just as Tony Blair had John Prescott to broaden his appeal as his Deputy Prime Minister, I will have Esther McVey as my Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, speaking to GB News, the MP for Tatton, Esther McVey, says she's backing Jeremy Hunt, who said she would be his Deputy PM if he becomes Prime Minister.
I thought, no, let's reach out, let's reach across the Conservative Party, because you'll know Jeremy Hunt and I are sort of at opposite ends of the spectrum. But I do not believe that we can get the country back on board. And that's what's key here. It is reaching out to the country, delivering for the country. And this is what we've got to do so that we can appeal to the blue wall. And I don't believe anybody better than Jeremy Hunt can appeal to that blue wall. And he, of me, thought that I could be the person who reaches out to that red wall.
Well, the former Health Secretary Sajid Javid wants to see a new plan to tackle the cost of living crisis.
I am really worried that we as a country are at risk of falling into a slow growth, low growth trap. And we need to increase that long-term growth rate. Otherwise, we will not be able to afford the public services that we all depend on. There are some people believe that we can't have growth, we can't have the tax cuts until we have growth. I don't think that is right. I think you must start with the tax cuts to kickstart the growth. It's not just tax cuts, you need more, but you need the tax cuts.
Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Tom Tugendhat, is also a contender. He says his background in the military makes up for his lack of ministerial experience.
I've got souvenirs from Iraq and Afghanistan. I've got a dodgy shoulder and a dodgy knees from soldiering in some of the hardest parts of the world. I've got photographs, sadly, of some people who aren't with us anymore, alongside whom I served and built a government in Helmand, built the National Security Council of Afghanistan. I've got souvenirs, memories and experiences of the real world, of what it really takes to change a country, what it really takes to build a society.
In other news now, almost 150 people have been intercepted crossing the Channel this weekend. Children were among those who were rescued from 3 small boats. It brings the total number of crossings this year to over 13,000, almost double last year's figure. Downing Street has confirmed the deportation agreement with Rwanda will continue despite Boris Johnson's resignation. At least 10 people have been killed after Russian rockets hit a 5-storey residential block in Ukraine. At least 34 people are feared to be trapped under the rubble after the building collapsed in the Donetsk region. Rescuers are scrambling to find survivors. Gunmen have shot dead 15 people in the South African township of Soweto near Johannesburg. Police say the attackers entered a tavern and started shooting randomly at patrons in the early hours of the morning. 9 people were also wounded. Protesters in Sri Lanka say they'll continue to occupy both the Prime Minister's home and the presidential palace until they both officially quit. President Rajapaksa is expected to resign on Wednesday, and the Prime Minister has agreed to step down but hasn't specified when. It follows dramatic scenes yesterday, which saw the PM's home set alight and protesters storming the presidential palace. Thousands of anti-government demonstrators clashed with police in the capital over the worst economic crisis in 7 decades. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens, of course. Now, it's back to Nana.
So good afternoon. It's just coming up to 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Are we in a cycle of nonsense? Now, I wanted to leave the EU to control our borders, our laws and, frankly, our lives. I didn't want a bunch of middle-aged bureaucrats, mainly men, who don't even live here in the UK, telling me what to do. I wanted our politicians in this country to run it without the shackles of the EU. I was sick of a flooded workforce bringing wages down and enabling big business to benefit on cheap labour. I wanted rules and regulations that would work in the interest of this country because I believed surely our politicians could do better. After all, they live here. Now, I was listening to LBC on the radio when this caller came to air.
I'm on Netflix only because I don't have to pay for it because a friend gifted me with a subscription. Nobody needs Netflix while there is Brexit Britain. You guys are incredible. Have been for the past 6 years.
Yeah, basically what he's talking about is how hilarious everything was watching us as we attempted to leave the EU. And the whole journey home, I couldn't stop laughing at just what our politicians in this country have put us through. Let's do a montage. And if you can't see the pictures, by the way, make them up in your head. It's probably still fresh in your memory. Let's start with winning the Leave vote 6 years ago. Oh, it was euphoric. I was so annoyed I hadn't put a bet on. I'd actually called the bookies that day and then changed my mind. I've never really put a substantial bet on anything in my life, but if I had, I would now be driving the Range Rover I've been dreaming of instead of my C1. All credit to it, though, it has done 170k miles and it's pretty good on the juice, especially with the fuel prices as they are. Now, I don't want to jinx it. Now, what I hadn't banked on was the power of the Ramona. Cast your mind back to Emily Thornberry in tears, or was it Anna Soubry, both equally as annoying, crying like precocious kids at school who didn't get their own way. David Cameron, who disappeared in a puff of smoke. Theresa May stepped into the breach, foolishly called an election and lost her majority. I recall things like fox hunting in her manifesto, ridiculous, totally unrelatable to regular people like you and me. I'll never forget that speech that she did when she was losing her voice and the letters fell off from behind her head. It was hilarious. And there followed years of shenanigans. We got a peek into the Houses of Parliament. It was addictive viewing. The rest of the world got to see how archaic our system is. And frankly, you'd have thought you were watching the comedy Yesminster instead of the reality. The antiquated language, eyes to the left, eyes to the right, John Bercow taking leave of his role as neutral speaker and deciding to openly show his Remain bias, a bit like the BBC. It was a total mess. It was not only entertaining, but hilarious, and the rest of the world agreed. We became a laughingstock, and they're still laughing. So 6 years on, 3 leaders down, we haven't moved a jot. In fact, there's a good chance that this has all been in vain, and we could erase that last 6 years and could end up going backwards, back to square one. It seems that those who have not come to terms with the democratic mandate will find every opportunity to change the narrative in their favour, and Boris Johnson, to them, was like a gift that kept giving. But for me, the most sinister of angles, and the one I found most unforgivable and far more dangerous to democracy than anything Boris Johnson did, was the assault by the established media on Boris, a democratically elected Prime Minister with the biggest majority, and I'm calling it out now. A disgraceful, sustained attack that rendered his voice silent and his actions powerless. He was attacked from all angles, and in the end, people started buying into it.
We've had people on his own side who did support him merely weeks ago who are saying it's over. And it is over.
I'm almost grateful to Boris Johnson there for just reminding us at the end that all of the words I used to describe him are fair and accurate and in some ways not even adequate, because he is utterly reprehensible, utterly vile, utterly despicable. Goodbye, Boris Johnson, and may we never look upon your like again.
Well, what if they don't like the next one? So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. In the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, taxes, who do you trust? Taxation has become the big fault line in the Conservative leadership contest. When announcing his candidacy, the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak warned voters not to believe fairy tale promises of lower taxes and higher spending. But other candidates like Jeremy Hunt, Sajid Javid and Liz Truss, all very rich indeed, I don't know about Liz, have put large tax cuts at the heart of their campaigns. And I want to ask, who has the right approach? At 5 o'clock, I'm going outside Top Gear now. That's a show that my son Ivory absolutely loves. He's just turned 5 and it's his favourite. And former Top Gear presenter and campaigner Quentin Wilson will be joining me live in the studio. We'll talk highs and lows during his time on the show and the lessons that he learned on the way. We'll also find out more about his passion for electric cars, which I know Danny will love to hear, and his work for Fair Fuel UK and Fair Charge. And later this hour, I'll be speaking to former Moscow reporter for Worldview. Now, he's come back from living in Russia and he'll be giving us a bird's eye view of the information that Russians are being fed by Putin about the war. It's an absolute eye-opener and not one to be missed. Danny Armstrong will be here to give us the latest on the situation in Ukraine from a Russian perspective. That's all on the way. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, so let's get started. Welcome again to my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Right, so welcome. Really good to see you both. Lizzie looking fabulous as usual. Danny looking the same.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, I noticed the difference there. I thought
it's got a bit of some.
Thank you, but I hadn't.
Yeah, no, I know. I
understood
the nuance.
Now, what do you think? OK, so we've seen Boris being deposed in the way he has, and we saw literally from the moment that Brexit was achieved, in a sense, or voted for, there was everything from all angles. And for me, whilst I appreciate people weren't happy and they didn't get what they wanted, for me, the worst bit about it was when I saw the media attacking and having their own hand in democracy. And in particular, the likes of the BBC, because I wasn't happy with that at all. And especially you remember Lee Anderson, when he pulled up that reporter who kept going on and on and on about Boris. I'm going to start with you, because we're talking about the BBC, and I've started it.
Well, one of the most amazing things and the surprising things in your monologue, Nana, is to learn that a Citroen C1 can go 170,000 miles. That aside, having spent 18 years at the BBC, did you know that? I've got first-hand anecdotes, experiences of the anti-Boris Johnson bias. I can give you a couple if you like. I was on air when it became apparent that Boris Johnson wasn't going to succumb to COVID, and I reported this in an upbeat and positive manner. I was immediately chastised by my station editor to say that I can't be positive. I was editorialising something, and I was thinking to myself, if that had been Jeremy Corbyn, or if that had been a Lib Dem leader or politician or whatever, then I know for a fact she wouldn't have done that. Another example is when I was doing my mid-morning show, and I'm not on Twitter, but the Twitter feed was on my screen, and there was a screen grab of today's newspapers, and Boris Johnson was getting a real kicking, and that came from the station editor as well. And I just inquired, I wonder whether that's a daily thing. So I went back the day before. No daily screen grab of papers. It was just yet another opportunity to kick the man when he's down. And just one final one. The Daily Mirror, Rishi Sunak was giving billions away, and this was the news, the top of the news reader who organises the news for that day, and she said openly, "I really want to like him, but I can't because he's a Tory." And I said, "You should leave your politics at the door. You know, this is the BBC. You should go and work for The Independent if you can't stand Tories. Go and work for The Guardian." And that definitely influences output, 100%.
And that is the thing. And it's not just them. It was a lot of the other media outlets as well. So they weren't the only ones that were guilty. But what concerns me in particular is that we have a public paid-for broadcaster actually giving a narrative that, in my view, felt very one-sided. And if it's not your side that they're doing it to, then you feel it. Although others have said, that it was very left-wing. So there are those who believe that there is another bias to the other way. Yeah. But on the Boris Johnson situation, that was very clear for me. Lizzie?
But I've got to look. I liked Boris at the beginning, and I was all full of hope for him. But let's be honest, he hasn't helped himself at times, and he speaks without thinking. He gets himself in a muddle. He's vague. And sadly, he got caught out lying and wasn't honest. And that's the thing. We can't have a prime minister that people think is a liar, and sadly, internationally, was becoming a joke.
Well, let's balance it out. Let's balance it out with Keir Starmer then in Beergate, which, surprise, surprise, he got cleared of by the Durham police and the crime commissioner, the commissioner who was... Well,
I've got to say, there's not much difference for what
exactly.
Boris did to what Keir did.
Why did they not handle that in the same way? That's what I mean. Look, I don't mind it. Yes, you're right, Boris did things that weren't acceptable. And as I said, he was the gift that kept giving. They just went, he's done that. Let's go. Let's use this as a stick to beat him with. If we can get rid of him, we can. And I think in the back of their mind, get somebody else who agrees with our policy.
I'll tell you why. Because Boris was the one that made the rules and he broke them. And the day before, where they were partying, and then the next day, our Queen had to bury her husband.
No,
and I
Boris
think that stuck.
At the party.
No, but he came down the stairs, didn't he? He was there. It was in his house. He must have known about it.
No, he wasn't. He was at Chequers.
He would have known. I'm sure he would have known about this. But they broke the rules. They broke the rules. And I know Keir Starmer, I don't get how he wasn't fined.
Well, exactly.
I really don't.
Listen, that's my point, though.
But Boris did make the rules on...
Yeah, but listen, it's a democracy. They vote for rules in the Houses of Parliament, and they need to get majorities, and that will include both parties. So they are jointly lawmakers. We employ them to do that. So they are all lawmakers. Admittedly, the Conservative Party had a majority, but the Labour Party supported many of the policies. And the Conservative Party were literally their own opposition anyway in most of this. But what I'm saying here is the treatment that Keir Starmer got was very different to the one that Boris got. Yet, ultimately, I believe that's my view, that they both broke the rules. However, Keir did not receive a fixed penalty notice.
I think it's because he is our Prime Minister. But Keir Starmer, I totally agree with you there, Nana. He also... lied, didn't he? Because Angela Rayner was there. But I'm afraid, as your Prime Minister, you have to abide by the rules. You're not above the rules.
That. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm talking about the fact that the mainstream media talk about integrity and this and that. But they've forgotten, Keir Starmer lied about the fact that Angela Rayner wasn't there. When I confront people and say, well, it's a lie, they go, well, I mean, and it's like, hang on, how can you say that that isn't a lie when it is clearly a lie? He said there was an impromptu gathering. There was a memo. He said there were hardly any people there until a bill emerged of over £200 worth of curry, which could not have been eaten by just 6 people, or however many he said it was. Not unless, of course, they're all the size of you, Danny.
I was actually waiting for that.
But
She didn't let me down.
She's not going to let you down. But Boris just seems to bluff his way out of it. And sadly, he's too vague. And people got sick of it. I know, but I know your point. And Keir Starmer was treated differently. I thought he should have got the fine. I agree with you there.
The expression turkeys voted for Christmas, I cannot believe the Tory party, they are basically voting turkeys to have their heads chopped off because Boris Johnson was the reason that they were delivered an 82-seat majority. The Red Wall, Boris Johnson famously said, lend me your vote whilst your hand is quivering over the ballot paper. Lend me your vote. Let's get Brexit done. And you have all of these brand new Tory constituencies.
But wasn't Boris trying to be too friendly and friends with everyone? That's why it didn't get done in
my point is that you have all of these MPs resigning from various positions, forcing Boris Johnson out of a job. They do not realise that they are going to get potentially hammered of course. No, they're going to get hammered at the next election because of this. Because I've driven down from the Midlands and we talk politics, me and my pals at the garage, and nobody gives a damn about probity with politicians, about integrity, because politicians have a lousy reputation anyway. So if there's another negative story, well, it's just another negative story about a politician. Yet the mainstream media, driven by the BBC and Channel 4, who loathe Boris Johnson, they have sort of pushed this agenda by asking MPs, are you happy with your Prime Minister's integrity after he promotes a sex pest? Now, the obvious answer is no. And then it just develops into a tsunami.
Well, and also, I suspect, look, if this had been somebody giving an opportunity to somebody who'd made a mistake once, you'd be saying, oh, that's really good of you to give them an opportunity to see if perhaps they'll improve their behaviour. They've done it again, 2 strikes, you're out. Yeah? If you'd given somebody a convict who you gave a job to, you knew his criminal record, and you gave him an opportunity, you'd be seen as somebody who's done a good thing, trying. Boris, maybe he did remember, maybe he didn't, 3.5 years ago. The point is, it's not he is not the one that carried out this nonsense with Chris. Chris Pincher was the one that should be responsible for his own thing.
I agree, but Boris knew about it.
The bottom line is, for me, it's not all the shenanigans, it's more the treatment that the mainstream media or the established media, because I know GBNews are now becoming the mainstream media, but it's the established media now who seem to, if they have a narrative and they push it, they kind of have an effect on democracy, and that is my problem with that. But I want to hear your thoughts. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GBNews on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, after the break, it is time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, taxes, who do you trust? Now, we've narrowed it down to Liz Truss, Sajid Javid, Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt. It's as taxation has formed one of the main dividing lines between the candidates for the leadership of the Conservative Party. So all you have to do is go online and check out that and give us your vote. Send me your emails as well. I'd love to hear what you think about that. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think. You can also tweet at GBNews. There is a poll up right now asking that question. Taxes, who do you trust? There are 4 or even 5 options. Cast your vote now, but first it's time for some weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry, warm and sunny for most, although skies will be a little cloudier in Northern Ireland. Let's take a look at the details. After a hot and sunny day, it will stay warm this evening in southwest England, with plenty of late sunshine and a gentle breeze. Temperatures will still be in the low 20s to start the evening. It will also be a fine end to the day in the southeast, with plenty of warm evening sunshine. There will also be a keen breeze around the coast, but light winds elsewhere. A fine end to the day in Wales. Warm sunshine will continue in the south, but elsewhere it will feel a little cooler in a sea breeze. Late sunshine will continue across the Midlands this evening. After a hot day, temperatures will still be rather warm as the sun sets. Dry and sunny weather will continue this evening in northeast England. It will feel cooler around the coasts, but inland it will stay warm. Some late sunshine will continue in southern Scotland, but there will be more in the way of cloud across the west, where it will feel cooler too. A fine end to the day in Northern Ireland with some patchy cloud and sunny spells. Temperatures will still be in the high teens during the evening time. Staying dry tonight across the UK with clear skies for many, but a little cloudier around northern coasts. A mild night with temperatures in double figures, and that's how the weather is shaping up overnight until tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
So good afternoon. It's just coming up to 25 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And don't forget, you can catch up with us on YouTube or download our GB News app where you can find out everything that's going on and even catch up with this show. Right, I'm Nana Akua, and we've got so much going on. But before the break, we were discussing when our politicians will redeem themselves. And let's have a look at what you've all been saying. Marion says the establishment rules there is no democracy in the UK anymore. They chucked out our Prime Minister over nothing. Wish Boris was still the Prime Minister. Yeah, I hear you. Yes, he made some mistakes like everybody else, but the constant assault was a bit much. Tim says, what you have said, Nana, is that our culture is leftist. That's what we need to alter. Boris did nothing since becoming Prime Minister to change the culture. Suella or Kemi would attack it head-on. Result, if they are given the chance. Well, that's my point. If they're given the chance, they might not be. Depends what the established media do to them. Pauline said, I thought TV was supposed to be neutral. Never watch it now. Yeah, well, I'm glad you're watching this. But we all have our opinions, and we're very glad to get yours on board. Now, keep your thoughts coming. A few others. I've got one here from John. John says, when it mattered, Boris did the right thing. His mother died and he broke no rules. The key issue is whether or not a politician is an anti-democrat. Boris is not an anti-democrat. His removal by the herd of lemmings was a disgrace. Without him, the red wall falls. Thank you for that. Keep them coming. Right, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, taxes, who do you trust? Sajid Javid, Jeremy Hunt. They've both said that if they're elected leader of the Conservative Party, they'll slash corporation tax from 25% to 15%. Now, that is in contrast to Rishi Sunak, who's warned that voters not to listen to fairy tales of higher spending and lower taxes.
Do we confront this moment with honesty, seriousness and determination? Or do we tell ourselves comforting fairy tales that might make us feel better in the moment but will leave our children worse off tomorrow?
So basically, he's going to put the taxes up, keep them nice and high, and we shouldn't feel bad about it because it's like medicine. It tastes bad, but it's doing good things. Right, so with taxation now becoming a key dividing line between leadership hopefuls, I want to ask, who do you trust on this particular issue? Right, so I'm joined now by Justin Urquhart-Stewart. He's the co-founder of Regionally. Now, OK, so Justin, the tax plans so far, I want to get a bit more detail on what we know about each of those who've put ideas forward. So let's start with, let's start with Rishi Sunak.
Right, what you've got here, a person with a bit more experience in the Treasury, he's got some idea. But unfortunately what's happening is they're doing a sort of race to the bottom at the moment, who can come up with the best tax cuts. And so one of the proposals he's got is reversing the income tax, or bringing forward the income tax payment, and then actually dealing with national insurance increase as well, actually trying to readjust that. But little minor adjustments, a penny here, a few percentage points, has a huge impact on the expenditure and the budget of the economy. Remember, in Britain, we've only got really 4 or 5 main taxes. You've got national insurance and income tax, which is roughly the same. Then, of course, you actually move on to the health service and education, and then corporation tax. After that, that's over 60%. So what you've got all the politicians now all tweaking about who can do a better tax cut than mine, having gone through all their papers, and then they're rewriting them because they keep changing. And in the position of really none of them focusing on, you don't actually just tax the cake so there's no cake left, you make the cake bigger. That's how you get a big tax take. So with all the proposals I've been reading so far, there's barely a mention of actually how this is actually going to make things grow and develop. And that's not just consumer spending, it's government, it's company policy, confidence, not only in the United Kingdom, waiting to invest, but also from overseas. We know that overseas investors at the moment are waiting because they don't trust what's happening at the moment and we want to get a clear message. So it's a bit humble, okay?
So Justin, okay, so Rishi Sunak, he's talking about increasing taxes or keeping taxes nice and high. What's Liz Truss saying? Is she saying she wants to reduce tax?
Yes, what she wants to do is actually bring down taxes, and actually earlier than before. So remember before, when Richie stood up and actually went through as his rabbit out of the hatch, we're going to have 1p off income tax at some stage ahead, but I'm not going to be too precise about it, say a couple of years, possibly just in time for a general election, so me. So what you're now seeing, certainly Liz Truss, is bring that forward now. Give people the cut now, and particularly because of the inflation that we're all suffering from, and the people who really suffer in this inflation, unlike the 70s, are those in the weakest in society, the poorest, and also pensioners as well. So that's the frustration they've got.
So which taxes is she saying that she would cut then?
What she was saying straightforward in terms of income tax, actually bring that forward. National insurance been pretty vague on it because, of course, we've got the increase coming in now, but at the same time, there's also some benefit. But it's a very muddled message. So the common theme with all of them is I can tax more than cut taxes more than you can. But look at the detail of it. I'm afraid an awful lot of people going on, I don't know, some technical terms which they think are clever, but the actual reader to it, I'm afraid, isn't helping and give us that one word, confidence.
And very briefly, Sajid Javid and also Jeremy Hunt, they've got a similar tax policy. They were talking about cutting corporation tax. Is that wise and is that helpful?
Well, the corporation tax is fascinating because it's not as big as most people think it is. You say corporates, oh, that's huge. But in terms of the overall percentage, it's about 9% of income coming in. So you can adjust it, but the important thing with corporation tax, and that's why he wants to adjust it, is it will mean that companies see Britain as a lower tax operation. But whereas before, of course, we had the previous chance of saying it's going to go up to 25%, which is a very significant disincentive for investing in Britain. I mean, when we started getting, we were in Europe, the highest amount of inward investment coming in. Now we're going to be at the bottom half of that league because we're making ourselves so expensive.
Right.
So that's why you've got the race to the bottom, who can cut those.
So that's not necessarily the best idea. Justin Stewart, thank you very much. He's the co-founder of Originally. Right, I'm joined by Sir John Redwood, Conservative MP for Wokingham. Right, Sir John, what approach do you think the next Prime Minister needs to take when it comes to taxation?
Well, I'm with the many candidates who believe that we need immediate tax reductions, and I'm not with Rishi Sunak, the outgoing Chancellor, who I think was squeezing the economy too hard and making the environment for business rather more hostile. I think we need to reverse both of those elements of his policy. I think immediately we need some VAT cuts on petrol and diesel and on domestic fuel all the time that oil prices are as high as they are at the moment. The revenue is collecting an awful lot more tax now from our diesel and petrol at the pumps because there's a 20% tax that rises every time the price of petrol goes up, called VAT. So I'm favourably disposed towards those leaders who want to do something immediate to ease the squeeze through VAT. I think it would be good if they could also remove what remains of the increase in national insurance that Mr. Sunak put through this year, because that was breaking a manifesto pledge. And again, it's squeezing people's incomes at a time when they're down, they're already struggling because of the huge increase in prices and their mortgages going up. And then I do think they need to be very careful about business taxation. I think if you set lower rates, you will probably collect more revenue for the reasons you've just been hearing, that you are a more attractive place, so more companies come here and they site and book more business here, so you actually collect more revenue. And let's take the Republic of Ireland, for example, our near neighbours. They collect far more revenue as a proportion of their revenue from business taxation, because they've set a corporation tax lower than all the other advanced countries. And it's been very attractive to business. And so a lot of large American corporations have gone there rather than coming to Britain because they've been offered a 12.5% tax rate.
Thank you so much for your view. That's Sir John Redwood. He's a Conservative MP for Wokingham. Thank you. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, after the break, we will continue with the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking taxes, who do you trust? And here's the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster Danny Kelly and also columnist and broadcaster Lizzie Cundy. Right, first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 4:34. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The race for Prime Minister is heating up, with the International Trade Minister, Penny Mordaunt, the latest to announce her leadership bid. 9 MPs are now in the running, with Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi and Transport Secretary Grant Shapps putting their names forward yesterday. They were joined by former Health Secretaries Jeremy Hunt and Sajid Javid, who've both promised to cut corporation tax. Earlier, Mr Hunt explained why he's throwing his hat in the ring.
Mr Hunt, what made you join the race?
Because I want to do a great job for my country, that's why. And the sun is shining.
How are you going to unite the country?
Well, sort out our big economic and international problems.
Well, the MP for Tatton and GB News presenter Esther McVeigh says she's backing Jeremy Hunt, who said she would be his deputy if he becomes Prime Minister.
I thought, no, let's reach out, let's reach across the Conservative Party, because you'll know Jeremy Hunt and I are sort of at opposite ends of the spectrum. But I do not believe that we can get the country back on board. And that's what's key here. It is reaching out to the country, delivering for the country. And this is what we've got to do so that we can appeal to the blue wall. And I don't believe anybody better than Jeremy Hunt can appeal to that blue wall. And he, of me, thought that I could be the person who reaches out to that red wall.
Almost 150 people have been intercepted crossing the Channel so far this weekend. Children were among those who were rescued from 3 small boats. It brings the total number of crossings this year to over 13,000, almost double last year's figure. At least 10 people have been killed after Russian rockets hit a 5-storey residential block in Ukraine. At least 34 people are feared to be trapped under the rubble after the building collapsed in the Donetsk region. Rescuers are scrambling to find survivors. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. Nana will be back in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
If you just joined us, where have you been? This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. We are the People's Channel. Now, we return to our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, taxes, who do you trust? Now, when announcing his candidacy for the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak, he warned voters not to believe fairy tale promises of lower taxes and higher spending. Other candidates like Jeremy Hunt, Sajid Javid and Liz Truss have put larger tax cuts at the heart of their campaigns. And I want to know whether you think, or which one you think has the right approach. Let's have a quick look at what you've already been saying. Kevin says, none. How can we trust Rishi? The answer is a cabinet outsider. Kemi, Penny or Suella would be a nightmare for Labour. Adam says, I'm assuming that Jeremy Hunt is in the running for banter purposes. Yeah, I reckon that must be the case as well, because I want to have a laugh. I'm with you. We saw how he handled the NHS. I mean, that's been disastrously managed for the last while when he was in charge of it. Alan says, I do not trust Hunt, Javid or Sunak, as all have proved their ambitions and will say whatever they think will get them the win. And that is the thing, actually. I sort of agree with that, because at the end of the day, they've had their chances to cut taxes, especially those ones in the cabinet. And why are they offering it now? If they could have done it then, why didn't they? Anyway, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Right, so I'm going to start with you, Lizzie. Taxes. I mean, it's just the bane of most people's lives.
Well, it is, and everyone is worried about the money in their pocket, aren't they? Let's be honest. And there are families that are so struggling at the minute, and that is why I don't think Rishi will ever get him. People, well, number one, don't relate to him.
Yeah.
He's married to a billionairess. I mean, it surprised me he can't have enough money to get the trousers to fit him, because they're always very short. But anyway, but it's not all about the numbers, it's about the people. He's like a forensic accountant. And I just don't think it's going to work. And what he did throughout the pandemic, furloughing, huge companies like Victoria Beckham's that shouldn't have had it.
No.
Forgetting about the small business.
Oh, no, that was disgraceful.
That was disgraceful.
Absolutely disgraceful.
And people won't forget. And there he was throwing the money, and the next minute he's trying to recover it. So for me, and as for that video, PR video he did, he was just absolute polished twaddle, if you don't mind me saying. And he reminds me of Tony Blair with the mannerisms, very Blair-esque. Sorry about that, I'm allowed to use that word.
I think
but
you are,
my
yes.
view.
I agree with Mr Redwood. I would like to see a VAT reduction, because a VAT reduction helps everybody immediately. So it cost me £150 to fill up the car on the way down to London, and I would benefit from a reduction in that. Whether I go out for a meal, stop laughing, or whether I make a purchase, I would make a saving. And I think Mr Redwood is correct. The people who are espousing for a reduction in the corporation tax, so as I understand, Nana, it is going to be 25% as of March next year.
Yes.
But that's for companies who have a net profit of over £250,000. Now, I'm self-employed. I don't make £250,000. So my corporation tax will be at 19%, which is the status quo. I think there are some people who are calling it for it to be reduced to 15%. Now, even though that would save me 4%, I'm not comfortable with that. I do very well just paying 19%. Yes, I've got to pay 20% VAT on all profits. I think that's a bit tight, but I accept it because I work for myself, I do very well. So I don't think the corporation tax should be reduced to 15%. I'm happy with 19%. I think this is one of the arguments behind the scenes at number 11 Downing Street between Sunak and Johnson, because Boris Johnson wasn't keen on a 25% corporation tax because big businesses, you have this myth that, we're going to move abroad, we're going to leave the UK. That's a load of baloney.
It costs them even more. But the other thing is what Mr Redwood was saying was that actually it encourages investment. If people think, my profits won't be taxed so ridiculously, then it encourages more businesses to invest in this country, which is what we want, because any economy that is shrinking will never be a profitable place. It needs to be growing. And as far as I can see, Rishi Sunak's policies, and I'm somebody who studied economics, all his policies appear to increase the tax take in terms of by taxation. And if you do that, in the end, you'll reduce the tax take, because then you'll realise there'll become a finite people that you can tax at that level until it then starts to go the other way. So it's not a wise move. The national insurance rise, I think, is also a bad tax to tax people on. I thought that was very bad.
We saw Tom Tugendhat, I don't know if you saw it on Alistair Stewart's show earlier today, where he said he's not going to do that. But also Liz Truss. I mean, do we want Liz Truss? I mean, she'd feature well in the Wooden Tops, but, as a leader, has she got that charisma? I don't think so. I may agree with what she's doing with the tax, but I really was very impressed with Tom Tugendhat, I have to say.
But one of Boris Johnson's main areas where people could warm to was his charisma. Now, people are saying, we don't want charisma, we want integrity, probity. I know. So is Liz Truss is dull as dishwater, is
well,
she?
She's a charisma bypass. I'm sorry, she is. And if you listen to her speeches, you nod off throughout.
Does that affect her ability to run a country?
Yes, it does, because look, you get somebody who's got energy and enthusiasm, it's attractive, and it attracts things, not only business, but it attracts people, and it attracts energy. It's not something that is tangible, it's just something that people are drawn to, and you cannot deny that it exists. Even though it is intangible, it's invisible, but that person has a charisma and a way about them that energises people, and you need that in politics.
You do.
You need it, but they also need to have the other part of the equation, which is the integrity, and then the other part of the equation, which is also the know-how. And what Boris, I thought, was very good at, he was good at delegation, so he was good at getting the right people in the right place to do the right jobs. I thought that he was very good at that, although he probably didn't do much of it himself. But, he was good at manoeuvring people. And that alone is a gift in itself, because you can't do everything.
And it's not a managerial job, it's a leadership. That's where it's very different. Because you've got to feel the pulse of people. You've got to, read the room. And also, don't have enemies like Dominic Cummings. I mean, that was something that I'm afraid, if you saw his tweet on Friday, my word.
Really?
Yeah, unbelievable.
You can't read it out. No, you can't. Don't read it out. We'll look for it.
But I mean, I have got a bit of it where he said that at least 3 current candidates would be worse than Boris, and it would be more insane than to have Truss, because she's clearly unfit to be near the nuclear code. He went, but more or less saying that the candidates are even worse than Boris.
So who is he saying that we should go for then?
Yeah.
Well, that is it.
He started... Listen, hey, Dominic, if you're watching now, Dominic, you started this thing. You wanted to press the button, you've pressed it. Now they've all imploded. Who are you suggesting? Because you've even said that they're not even as good as what we had, so... But are you suggesting yourself?
Exactly. But it's very important to have charisma. I mean, whether you liked or loathed him, Tony Blair had it in abundance.
Yeah, but what
Brown
about,
didn't.
But
we
what about
need
tax
to have
policies?
the
honesty. Tony Blair made.
Hang on, wait, sorry, but I want to know about tax policies. I hear about the charisma, I'm happy about that, but I want to know tax policies. Who are you going to go for, Liz?
I would go for Tom Tugendhat.
That's just because you know him and he's a friend.
Is he?
No, it isn't. I'll tell you why.
No. I want to hear about your friendship in a minute.
OK.
Quickly.
OK, I'm going to go for Sajid Javid, because he's run about half a dozen government departments. I think he's got a good head on him.
He's too emotional. The jack of all trades and master of none.
And he's a bit of a lookalike of mine.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that's probably the real reason. Right, the show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voice onto the show. Your chance to tell us what you really think about what we're discussing. Right, where should we go? Should we go to Hampshire?
Oh, yes, I love Hampshire.
Chat with
It's
Mark?
warm down there.
Oh, is it? Yeah, lovely. Mark Culverhouse. Mark Culverhouse, probably not in a cold house, or he's not in a house, actually. Mark, he's outside. Mark, it looks lovely where you are. Oh, beautiful. Mark, talk to me then. Who do you trust then with the purse strings in terms of taxation?
None of them. None of them whatsoever. They all talk about trust and integrity. Hang on a minute. Rishi, you put that video in probably last 2 weeks, put that together. It didn't get thrown together in 2 days. So obviously he's been planning this for a while, and there's no integrity or trust there whatsoever amongst all of them. I mean, I'm self-employed, and at the moment, on average, I'm spending about £60 to £70 extra in my van on diesel, just driving to and fro from my jobs. £100 to £170 a week now in diesel costs. And when you look at the diesel price at £1.99, it works out roughly 90p of that is in tax. The other £1.10p left goes between all the other people who produce it, sell it, whereas the government takes 90p of it. So why haven't they sorted that out? If they were going to go and start sorting taxes out, they could have sorted this out weeks ago, and helped the average person with their fuel costs to drive to work. Because at the moment, a lot of them are getting to the point where they can't afford to drive to work at the moment, with the way it's going. The same with the fuel, with your electric and your gas. It's people out here at the moment are worse off by near on £300, £350 plus a month of the average working person, while they're all sitting there pretty rubbing their hands and fighting amongst each other.
Well, they're all considerably richer than us, though, aren't they? All those ones going for it, they're all millionaires, aren't they? Well, listen, Mark, it's really good to talk to you.
Would she have, Rishi's wife, be paying tax if she hadn't been found out?
No, well, exactly. No, she wouldn't have. That's the answer to that. Mark, thank you very much. It's lovely to talk to you. Enjoy the sunshine. That is Mark Culverhouse. He's not in a house. He's outside in Hampshire talking to us. He is our GB voice, I know. Right, today I've been asking taxers, who do you trust? Is it Liz Truss? Is it Sajid Javid, Rishi Sunak or Jeremy Hunt? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. And T says, I go with Liz to truss our taxes with. Very good. Barbara says, we all know Rishi is right, but the people in general don't like tightening their belts. They'd rather pass the problem on to their descendants. It's the same old story. I wouldn't trust Hunt or Javid with anything, never mind taxes. Monty says, got to be Liz Truss, but no matter who gets it, in Sturgeon, Putin and Barnier are the winners. And there is a poll up right now throughout the show asking who do you trust and who do you think is at the top of that poll? Who do you think's at the top, Danny?
Sajid Javid.
What do you think, Liz?
It probably is too. I'd like it to be my mate Tom, but I don't think it
Tom's
will
not on the list.
No, I know.
We didn't start with him. Currently, 66% of you say Liz Truss, 11% say Sajid Javid, 16% say Rishi Sunak, and only 8%, which I think is too many, say Jeremy Hunt. Well, listen, keep those thoughts coming. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. In a moment, I'll be speaking to a former Moscow correspondent, Danny Armstrong, on how Russians feel about Vladimir Putin. And we'll also be discussing the RAF deploying fighter jets to Finland and Sweden for joint training exercises with Dr. Alan Mendoza from the Henry Jackson Society. After 5, we'll be going outside with Top Gear's Quentin Wilson. He was the presenter of the show in the 90s and is one of the country's finest motoring journalists. He's also a huge advocate for electric cars. Stay tuned, but first it's a short break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
If you just joined me, welcome on board. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Well, now it's time for World View. And this part of the show, I like to get the latest news from around the globe. And today, I'm talking Vladimir Putin. With the war in Ukraine raging on and seemingly at the bottom of the news agenda, I want to shed some light on the conflict and ask Russians, find out what Russians actually think of their leader. So I'm joined now by former Moscow correspondent Danny Armstrong. He's here in the studio with me now. Danny, thank you very much for joining me. Now, you actually used to work for Russia Today, is that right? And you were in Russia at the time. So talk to me about, you know, when the war started, because obviously the main war, obviously there was the annexation of Crimea in 2014, but things have moved on. Talk to me about what happened when Putin invaded.
Yeah, well, I think this was kind of a sleeper hit that forced the whole of Russia to kind of sit bolt upright. Some were disgusted, some were dismayed. There are quite a lot of people who did actually support what they call the special military operation into Ukraine. We'll get to that in a little while. But for the most part, there were people who had their whole lives kind of turned upside down. Some people had friends that were going to have their lives uprooted, friends that were going to unfortunately die, some family members. In some cases, it was both. There were people who were in absolute disarray. There were people who were in relationships, Russians and expats that had to move to Central America, people who had to move to Georgia just to get their life back on track.
Wait, is this from Russia?
From Russia. There was a complete exodus.
Why was that?
Because it's in a neutral ground, say if it was in Georgia, some people moved to Armenia, Central America, South America. It's just easier for them to coexist.
So the war started, you were working for RT, you left obviously immediately because you probably didn't want to be any part of that. What was the narrative that was coming out?
Well, we can start a little bit from kind of my position.
Okay.
My job, for the most part, was to work against that Russian propaganda. The propaganda from the West that came out, that kind of anti-Russian narrative, that anti-Russian sentiment. I mean, we see a lot of it today. Whether it's been kind of deserved or not. I mean, that's a kind of a different question. Of course, a lot of people are disgusted by the war. A lot of people want to go against Russian companies. Of course, we've had people who have been sanctioned. Roman Abramovich is obviously one of them, but there's a lot of people who actually just kind of are disgusted at the Russian nation as one, and that's kind of a little bit uncalled for.
Why? Why is it uncalled for?
Well, I think it's a little bit uncalled for because people have an opinion that Russian people are all for this. As we were just speaking before, there's not one opinion on this special military operation. Well, if they're not
all for it, so if you're saying they're not all for it, if this were me in my country, I'd be protesting heavily and I'd make sure that somehow I would, there'd have to be some form of action I don't think I could tolerate. If the United Kingdom decided to try and do something, I mean, I know obviously there was the Blair situation with Iraq, which millions of people protested against it. It did come to an end, but it turned out that it was, in my view and in most people's view, an illegal
war. Not one
war.
person who protested then was threatened with 15 years detention.
No, that's true.
I was at those protests straight after the war. I mean, I was on set. I was in the Moscow studio. I then quit. Me and my fiancée then went to the protests. There were thousands and thousands of people in central Moscow. People, the state has cracked down really, really hard on people who have even shown the slightest bit of support for Ukraine. There was a woman with a bobble hat in the colours of the Ukrainian flag that was arrested and fined. She now has a criminal record. People are really threatened. If people go out into the street, they're going to be beaten. They're going to be put into the back of police vans. It's not the same as if we tar everybody with the same brush, all Russians. It's the same as if we were saying that everybody who voted for the Labour Party has the blood of 1 million Iraqis on their hands because Tony Blair went to war. It wouldn't really be logical when it comes down to it.
That's true, but if we now, I mean, purely for the fact that this is going on for a long time, a lot of people are still dying. It is clear that this is an invasion. What is the sentiment then in Russia as a general view? Because it feels like the rest of the world has sort of slightly stopped talking about it as much because we realise we're almost powerless. Putin is threatening with the nuclear button, and nobody wants that. Nobody wins that. Do you believe he'd actually do that?
Well, do I believe that he would actually do it? I think there's a lot of posturing over it. Whichever side you may be on, whichever viewpoint you may have on it, I think we can both agree that the West, and obviously led by the US and NATO and Russia, have used Ukraine as kind of their battlefield or their playfield to settle their differences. If we look at Vladimir Putin's words just the other day, he said that it looks like the West is ready to fight down to the last Ukrainian. Now, those words were really chilling because that means down to the last person, down to the last Ukrainian. That brings in the human element of it. That is a really touching thing. That evokes real big emotions, and it brings it down to the human element. Now, whatever you may think, if you're on the viewpoint, there are people in Russia who support this special military operation, or whether you're in the West and you're, of course, disgusted by it, we can bring it down to the fact that there is a lot of things that led up to this. There was a lot of posturing by NATO, a lot of posturing by the West, a lot of ignoring of those Russian red lines. However, they may have been logical, they may have been acceptable, those red lines for Russia, which included no expansion eastwards from NATO. And this is basically what led to this special operation, as it's called in Russia, being launched.
So the majority of Russians then, do you think, in your view, when you were there, that the majority of Russians supported Putin's invasion?
There isn't one opinion that's shared by the whole of Russia. We can split it down into a generational divide.
Yeah,
we can split it down into a generational divide. If we take the youth of Russia, now the youth of Russia they're very computer literate. They can access the internet and they can get different news sources. Now, news source is a very important thing because a news source in Russia, basically the free press or the independent press, has been banned. People only have in Russia what is fed by the state. Even Russian independent media has been shut down. Places like the Echo of Moscow.
So what about the youth? So the youth in general.
So the youth in general can access different news sources.
So where are they in it?
If we were to take probably the youth of Russia, we would be saying that many are against it.
Yeah.
The majority are against it. If we were taking probably maybe up to around about 35, 40 as a cutoff point, and then from 40 onwards, there are people who support the idea of Russia being returned to a great country. They have this complex of being returned to this great status of what it once was, feared and respected by the rest of the world. There are a lot of people who support that notion. That notion is actually supported by Vladimir Putin, and consequently people support Vladimir Putin. There are people who say that Vladimir Putin once said that it's a great geopolitical catastrophe, that there was the fall of the Soviet Union, and he wants to return Russia to that. I mean, that means...
Is he ill? Because a lot of people have been saying that. Very briefly, because we've got about 20 seconds.
I can't say.
Do people think he is? Do people think he's ill?
Well, I can't say. I can only speculate, and I wouldn't like to do that on your show, Nana. Because...
Why? Because he'll come and get you?
Yeah, maybe.
You never
They'll come and get the both of us.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't. He's answering the questions, not me. I haven't been there. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Danny. Really good to talk to you. That's Danny Armstrong. He was a correspondent in Moscow. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. More to come on the way. So it's just gone 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics hitting the headlines right now. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 5. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The race for Prime Minister is heating up, with the International Trade Minister, Penny Mordaunt, the latest to announce her leadership bid. 9 MPs are now in the running, with Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi and Transport Secretary Grant Shapps putting their names forward yesterday. They were joined by former Health Secretaries Jeremy Hunt and Sajid Javid, who've both promised to cut corporation tax. Earlier, Mr Hunt explained why he's throwing his hat in the ring.
Mr Hunt, what made you join the race?
Because I want to do a great job for my country, that's why. And the sun is shining.
How are you going to unite the country?
Well, sort out our big economic and international problems.
Well, he's also spoken to the BBC's Sunday morning programme.
It is because the two biggest challenges we face as a country now are the international crisis in Ukraine and an economy teetering on the brink of recession. And I am the experienced Foreign Secretary who is also an entrepreneur who will get the economy going. And I also recognise that the leader of a political party has to win elections, and that means a broad appeal. So just as Tony Blair had John Prescott to broaden his appeal as his Deputy Prime Minister, I will have Esther McVey as my Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, the former Health Secretary Sajid Javid says he wants to see a new plan to tackle the cost of living crisis.
I am really worried that we as a country are at risk of falling into a slow growth, low growth trap. And we need to increase that long-term growth rate. Otherwise, we will not be able to afford the public services that we all depend on. There are some people believe that we can't have growth, we can't have the tax cuts until we have growth. I don't think that is right. I think you must start with the tax cuts to...
Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Tom Tugendhat, is also a contender. He says his background in the military makes up for his lack of ministerial experience.
I've got souvenirs from Iraq and Afghanistan. I've got a dodgy shoulder and a dodgy knees from soldiering in some of the hardest parts of the world. I've got photographs, sadly, of some people who aren't with us anymore, alongside whom I served and built a government in Helmand, built the National Security Council of Afghanistan. I've got souvenirs, memories and experiences of the real world.
In other news, almost 150 people have been intercepted crossing the Channel this weekend. Children were among those who were rescued from 3 small boats. It brings the total number of crossings this year to over 13,000, almost double last year's figure. Downing Street has confirmed the deportation agreement with Rwanda will continue despite Boris Johnson's resignation. At least 15 people have been killed after Russian rockets hit a 5-storey residential block in Ukraine. At least 34 people are feared to be trapped under the rubble after the building collapsed in the Donetsk region. Rescuers are scrambling to find survivors. Gunmen have shot dead 15 people in the South African township of Soweto near Johannesburg. Police say the attackers entered a tavern and started shooting randomly at patrons in the early hours of the morning. 9 people were also wounded. Protesters in Sri Lanka say they'll continue to occupy both the Prime Minister's home and the presidential palace until they both officially quit. President Rajapaksa is expected to resign on Wednesday, and the Prime Minister has agreed to step down, but hasn't specified when. It follows dramatic scenes yesterday, which saw the PM's home set alight and protesters storming the presidential palace. Thousands of anti-government demonstrators clashed with police in the capital over the worst economic crisis in 7 decades. The UK is set to swelter this week with a heat health alert being issued for some regions. The UK Health Security Agency warning comes into effect tomorrow and will be in place until Friday. Temperatures are expected to hit 32 degrees, with those in affected areas being advised to stay in the shade, checking on vulnerable and elderly people. They reached the high 20s today, with Scotland recording its hottest day of the year so far, reaching 27 degrees in the Highlands. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Nana.
So hello, good afternoon. It's just coming up to 7 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Joining me today, it's broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Now, still to come, each Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, former MP or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And today, we go outside Top Gear. Can't believe it, I'm so excited because shortly I'll be speaking to TV legend Quentin Wilson. He was a presenter on the original lineup of Top Gear for a decade in the 1990s. He's a regular face in Westminster, lobbying ministers and MPs to get a better deal for British drivers. And of course, he's a long-time believer in electric cars. They are the future. I think not. Coming up, my Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time for a general election? There's been fighting talk from the leader Sir Keir Starmer in the Mirror. He's laid down the gauntlet and told the Tories to call an election. He's vowed to beat any candidate chosen. Well, you can vow, but that's a whole different thing, actually winning. He also accused Boris Johnson of squatting in Downing Street, whilst Tory MPs who parroted his lies try to wash their hands of him. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time for a general election? You can get your thoughts through to me via email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews. So it's time for Outside, and today I'm speaking to one of the original presenters of Top Gear, Quentin Wilson. Now, Quentin set up and founded a car dealership after university, selling not your everyday car, not your averagely priced car, but Ferraris and Maseratis. He appeared on the original Top Gear show and co-presented with Jeremy Clarkson, and primarily he was an expert in used cars. He also was the deputy editor of the only magazine solely devoted to second-hand motors. It was called Buying Cars. He then went on to present Fifth Gear, created Britain's Worst Driver, not literally, it's a show, and has since gone on to campaign for fairer fuel prices and a wider roll out of electric vehicles. And I'm very pleased to say that Quentin Wilson joins me now. Quentin, thank you very much for joining me.
Pleasure.
Right. So this is wow, you started off. So you went to university, you studied something, then you came out. Your first thing that you did, was that the first thing you did, setting up a car dealership?
I'd always been tinkering with cars between school and university, and my earliest recollection is being fascinated with them, absolutely, because they were a thing which increased your personal magnetism by 100%. If you had a nice car, all the girls would want to talk to you. So at university, I was going to, campus in Jensens and old Maseratis, which you could buy for literally a couple of £1,000. And I remember spending all the money I was paid in a grant to buy books on this lovely Ford Granada 3-litre GXL, because it was just, why wouldn't you? So, and the Sweeney and Jack Regan and all that.
Oh, yeah, I remember all that. I used to love that.
So always been fascinated with cars, and then started up buying and selling them, and then writing about them because I'd studied English. And then I got the phone call one day from a man who sounded like a vicar on Top Gear, the BBC. Would you like to come and present? And that's it. The rest, as they say, is history.
Wow. What was that like? Because you presented with Jeremy Clarkson. What's he like?
We kind of arrived almost at the same time. And look, he is unquestionably Britain's best motoring authority, without a question. Nobody has ever eclipsed him, nor, I think, will they. To work with, he was, what's the word I'm looking for, challenging. As lots and lots of people, not least small countries, found out when they queued up to complain at Television Centre to the Director General that they were making fun of Mexico or China or, it was just relentless. But that was the power we had then, and we changed the way people talked about cars. Because back then, it was a very closed automotive journalistic world where you got the free car or the loan car and the flight to the launch and the five-star hotel. And we didn't want any of that because we were BBC, so we just told it like it was. And I remember the managing director of Renault saying to his ad agency, after we'd said something nasty about his Renault Spider, I want you to cancel all the adverts on the BBC. Well, actually, we don't have any. So we just carried on, and I think cars were better. Manufacturers made cars more interesting, and they listened to me about build quality and service intervals and all that sort of thing. So I like to think we changed.
Well, your best car ever, your favourite car? Don't say an electric one.
No. The best car that I have ever driven is the McLaren F1.
Oh, wow.
And that was, it does 240 miles an hour, but I think I only got up to 194. And Clarkson just said, well, you're a complete wuss, But that was wonderful. Really, really, really incredible British car as well.
I think mine was a Jaguar XK8 convertible.
Lovely.
It was lovely. It was a 5.4 plate, so before they turned...
before they turned into the...
Yeah. But my first ever car was actually a Cortina Mark 3, I think it was, left-hand drive.
Lovely.
It took the corners like a boat.
It's worth some money now.
Unfortunately, well, thankfully, it's gone.
I had a Jaguar XK8 convertible and drove it through an Italian checkpoint, and had been going far too fast on the Italian autostrada, and I thought I was in real trouble. And the Italian policeman looked at the car, kissed the bonnet and said, "La bella macchina, go, go, go."
That is the style, that is the style. You've done lots of different shows, though. So it's not just... what happened then? Because I remember Top Gear, you left, and then Fifth Gear came along. What happened there? Was it...
OK, well, Jeremy left, and then they brought people in from Los Angeles who told us to... This is all the BBC kind of going woke, and that this was the first stirrings of it. And would tell Tiff and I, Tiff Nadell, who presented it as well, and we were in our late 40s, early 50s, to put gel in our hair and wear our shirts outside our trousers because more people would watch, and that's sort of nonsense. And we did a piece in America making gentle fun of the Americans and their big, large cars that you can't park and that they don't handle. And then all these jokes were cut out of this piece with a kind of editorial censorship that we'd never had before as a programme. So we huffed and we puffed, and Jeremy walked out and did his own thing. And then I couldn't stand it and walked out too. But then I started Fifth Gear with Vicky and Tiff, and then Jeremy started the new Top Gear. So, you know, that's history, and that's the way it goes.
Top Gear was very, very good. Although I've watched them on Amazon Prime. What's it called now? The other thing they do. They've stopped doing
Grand Tour.
Grand Tour. My son Ivory, he's 5 now. He watches it all the time. And in fact, one time he was in the bath and he used a swear word, and I said, "Who's that?" And my daughter went, "It was Ivory." She goes, "She's been watching too much Grand Tour." A little 5-year-old. Bless his heart. Bless his heart. So weren't you also on Strictly?
Yeah, second series of Strictly. And look, I have no shame here. I did it knowing in full well that I dance like a JCB. You know, I'm completely uncoordinated. And I said to my wife when they asked me, should I do Strictly? And she said, if you want to make a complete fool of yourself, yes. And look, I'm a great believer in self-deprecation. That it's good if you're in the public eye to make fun of yourself, not take yourself too seriously. So I did it in the full and certain knowledge that this was going to be a disaster, and disaster it was.
Yes.
And it was 8 out of 40. And Bruno said it was like watching a Reliant Robin circling a Ferrari.
Yeah.
But I have no regrets because it was good, and people still remember it, still come up to me and say, "You're so brave."
And you came where? Were you out immediately?
Oh, I was, yeah. I mean, it was first off the bus.
You were the first off.
Yeah.
I thought so. I thought I'll let you tell me that. No, I read somewhere that you're one of a twin. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is there another one of you?
A twin brother.
Really?
Yeah.
Is he an identical twin?
No, mercifully not. I think if you're identical twins, you really have a hard time with establishing an identity. So he went to Cambridge and did modern languages, and he does his own thing. And yeah, I mean, being twins is hard. It's quite difficult. Because
I don't think I can handle it, because I'd be extremely jealous, especially if the twin looked like me and was slightly thinner or slightly...
And there's a kind of connection you don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, when they hurt, you hurt, and all that sort of thing. It's really difficult to put into words. But I mean, I guess it's great having a companion in your childhood and in your later life. But it's not as easy as it looks.
No, it doesn't. Well, it's like you've got a best friend though for life.
Yeah.
Or not unless you don't like each other, then you've got somebody who hates you for life. But
quite.
But that generally is the way with brothers and sisters in the end, isn't it? Now, since you've done a lot of TV, a lot of writing and things, but now you've got yourself behind different campaigns. I know you love electric cars, but I know you're dealing with Fair Fuel UK and other sort of work. Tell me a bit about that.
OK, so I was the co-founder of Fair Fuel UK, and that was back in 2011 when we saw Alistair Darling enact that fuel escalator. So he was Chancellor of the Exchequer at the time, and he said that fuel must go up by a set margin every budget. So we did the maths and thought, whoa, this is going to be bad for GDP. So we started up, and this was Peter Carroll, who did the Tendo Consulting Gurkha campaign with Joanna Lumley. Mm-hmm. And we started up this campaign, and it's kitchen table lobbying. So no money and just being clever about political lobbying. And we managed 12 years of no fuel duty rises. All those successive governments and successive chancellors of the Exchequer listened to us, and we had, huge followings of people who would email both the Chancellor and the Treasury and their MP. And it managed to keep fuel at this level. and keep the duty and the VAT down. But I left Fair Fuel about a year and a half ago because, and I make no apologies of what I did. You know, that money, 120 billion we saved, and The Guardian called it the most successful single-issue political lobbying campaign in modern British political history. So that 120 billion went back into the pockets of people who drive and hardworking people who find it difficult. And you get lots of brickbats about that money should have been spent on hospitals and things like that. It went back into the economy. So I don't feel any guilt about that. But that was then and this is now. And I think we now have the technology where we can drive, as I have done today, 300 miles on electricity alone.
No.
Yeah.
You didn't get the heebie-jeebies that you're going to run out?
Nope. No.
It must be a Tesla. Obviously,
yes, well,
yeah.
Other makes of electric car are available.
Yeah, but you won't be able to charge them. Good luck with
but
that.
I stopped at a certain hamburger place and plugged it in there. And it's fine.
You have to sit around there, don't you? You have to sit there for
20 minutes. Enough.
Listen, if you have a little couple of kids in the back and things like that going on, you can't sit around for 20 minutes.
Well, OK, look, but it doesn't inconvenience my life at all.
That's
and you
right. Stop
for a KFC or a McDonald's, and by the time you finish, the car will tell you it's finished charging. And the big thing here, Nana, is that it cost me to do those 300 miles, 8 quid, 9 quid. Now, in a
well, that will change. That will change, though. You know how it starts. It starts off better, then it ends up being worse. It's a bit like diesel. They did it to diesel.
Yeah, Gordon Brown, 2001. That was absolutely unforgivable. And that's why we have the air quality problem, the particulate problem. And that's why I say, look, the things about electric car, it's clean air, it's energy security. We can't carry on buying oil from that Russian demagogue. And also, it's about the cost of living. You know, if we can get to where we want to go for a few pounds instead of hundreds, that has to be good. And then the global warming stuff we can argue about later.
Yeah. Well, it's also the cost of the car. Let's not forget.
Well, I know.
They're quite expensive.
But look, I have a campaign group called Fair Charge UK, and we are campaigning for lower charging costs. But also, I was talking to the Shadow Secretary of Transport the other day. We need to make electric cars more affordable. Absolutely.
Well, if they're going to fly,
no
they're going to have to be.
And in Scotland, they have an interest-free loan scheme. So I want us to have the same system here where, because electric cars don't depreciate, they go up in value, they can be underwritten, not as a wasting asset, but as something that appreciates. So you could make it cheaper for people to use electric cars, just for a week, a month, or whatever.
We'll see whether they catch on. I don't think they're going to catch on.
But it's my mission
they're
to
not going to
convert
catch on.
you.
I can't wait to buy myself a big old gas guzzler as soon as I can, as soon as I can afford it. Well, it's my C1 that's done 170,000 miles. It has.
Citroen C1?
Citroen C1, I know.
Wow, that's some sort of record.
Is it really? It loves me. I love it. I can't let you go without asking you about this whole situation with Boris, because I'm wondering what your view is of it, because I watched it. I didn't like what I saw, but what's your...
I'm probably the wrong man to ask, because I've worked with Boris. When he was Mayor of London, we did a lot together on, surprise, surprise, electric cars and charging, and would be photographed outside windy supermarket car parks with these electric chargers, which were then new. And I found him extremely kind of immersed in the subject, knowledgeable, polite, efficient, all that. So, you know, and I always say it how it is and how I know people from experience. I don't think he's as bad as he's painted. He did, I think, a very decent job with the Brexit, with the COVID, and with Ukraine. And what's the word he used? It's eccentric. Yeah. We're on the verge, possibly, of a war in Europe. Yeah. We have a massive cost of living crisis. We have a global energy crisis. Is now the right time? You know? I'm sorry, like him or loathe him, this is the wrong time to be doing this.
Well, I'm with you on there. And what about, and very briefly, the media? Did you think that they treated him fairly?
I thought it was revenge politics. And for people, no names mentioned, to have a website up and running in December, I mean, come on. You know, that's not nice. And then to be nice to everybody and his face and all the time scheming, it's et tu, brute.
All of them. Well, listen, it's really good to talk to you, Quentin. Thank you so much for joining us.
And my mission is to convert you to an electric car.
Never. Thank you so much. That is Quentin Wilson. This was Outside. We went outside Top Gear. Coming up, it is the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time for a general election? The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says it is. He has vowed to beat any candidate chosen to be the next Tory leader in an election and promised a fresh start for the country. Well, we'll find out more about that. Make sure you join me. But first, let's get some weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry, warm and sunny for most, although skies will be a little cloudier in Northern Ireland. Let's take a look at the details. After a hot and sunny day, it will stay warm this evening in southwest England, with plenty of late sunshine and a gentle breeze. Temperatures will still be in the low 20s to start the evening. It will also be a fine end to the day in the southeast, with plenty of warm evening sunshine. There will also be a keen breeze around the coast, but light winds elsewhere. A fine end to the day in Wales. Warm sunshine will continue in the south, but elsewhere it will feel a little cooler in a sea breeze. Late sunshine will continue across the Midlands this evening. After a hot day, temperatures will still be rather warm as the sun sets. Dry and sunny weather will continue this evening in northeast England. It will feel cooler around the coasts, but inland it will stay warm. Some late sunshine will continue in southern Scotland, but there will be more in the way of cloud across the west, where it will feel cooler too. A fine end to the day in Northern Ireland with some patchy cloud and sunny spells. Temperatures will still be in the high teens during the evening time. Staying dry tonight across the UK with clear skies for many, but a little cloudier around northern coasts. A mild night with temperatures in double figures, and that's how the weather is shaping up overnight until tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good afternoon, this is GB News. It's coming up to 27 minutes after 5 o'clock. If you've just joined me, where have you been? I'm Nana Akua. We're live online on TV and on digital radio. And it is time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time for a general election? There's been fighting talk from the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, in the Mirror. He's laid down the gauntlet. He's told the Tories to call an election. He's vowed to beat any candidate chosen. Interesting. So for my Great British Debate this hour, what do you think? Is it time for just that? I'm joined now by Alex Shelbrooke. He's the Conservative MP for Elmet and Rothwell. Right, so thank you very much for joining me. In your view, we've got a bit of a mess going on. The Tories have imploded. They've got candidates coming out of their ears. I don't know how they're going to get enough votes either way, because literally all of them are going for it. Is it time for a general election to sort this mess out?
No, not at all. And I think that, this isn't America. We have a parliamentary system. The leader of the party is the one put forward for the Prime Minister. I hear what Keir Starmer was saying, but in the words of Mandy Rice-Davies, he would say that, wouldn't he?
Well, yes, he would. But then a lot of the public are watching it and thinking, hang on a minute, we didn't vote for any of the candidates that you're putting forward. We understand your way of electing or choosing your leader if somebody's still in post, and you will do it through your membership. But a lot of the British public are looking at this and thinking, well, what if we don't like what we're seeing?
Then they'll kick us out of the next election. The reality is that Boris Johnson stood in one constituency out of the 650. The Conservative Party took the largest number of seats and therefore made him Prime Minister because he was leader of the Conservative Party. We will settle this issue with the final two candidates before the 21st of July or on the 21st of July. And then we're only halfway through the Parliament. If we have chosen somebody the public don't want, they will boot us out of the election. But I absolutely believe we have a very strong field of candidates coming from many wide areas. And I think that one of the reasons Starmer wants a early election is because his whole tactic has been to attack Boris Johnson. He's finding it very hard to pivot to attacking the Conservative Party now. And that's why he wants a snap election, because his tactic has been purely personality-based politics. And even under Boris, when Starmer got onto policy stuff, Boris just batted him out the park.
Well, so I want to ask you, though, Alec, are you pleased that Boris has gone?
Well, I'm relieved that it's come to an end, because I was listening to Quentin earlier on when he was talking about, we've got the war, we've got the cost of living crisis, and we just weren't ever getting onto those issues. It was one thing after another. And whatever the rights and wrongs of it are, we have to move forward, and we couldn't. And for whatever those reasons were, we couldn't. And these are some of the most important issues of our time in a very long time. And I'm afraid that it just reached the consequences as we saw last week. So my only relief is a sense of we need to hit the refresh button and actually get onto the issues that really matter to people.
Well, do you think the Tories, if we did have an election right now, would win?
Well, I think in the time frames it would happen in, yes, I think we probably would, because what we saw in certainly the Wakefield by-election was that the Labour Party didn't gain any votes. Our votes stayed at home, a lot of that due to discontent with the leadership. And I think that, if we did go into an election this autumn, I think, yes, we would win it. Of course, there would be seats we lose. There might be some we gain. I mean, some of the seats have got very, very tiny majorities, 100 votes or so. You could never call those. But I think this is a reset button. I think that's why Labour are so desperately trying to call for an election, because they know this was their moment and it's passing, because they have just done the whole tactic against Boris Johnson. Because, where's the policy? Where's it going forward? So, yes, I think even at this stage, but look, let's go back to Brenda from Bristol. People don't want a general election. They want the government to get a grip, sort out what's going on, and we're halfway through this term. If they decide in a couple of years' time that we haven't done that job, they will kick us out. But that's a parliamentary democracy. It's not a presidency.
Well, I mean, if the Tory party generally cared what people wanted, they probably wouldn't have done this. I mean, do you think that the leadership thing is actually ill-judged to be, yes, you said that we were stuck in a way because they wouldn't leave Boris alone, but this, you might think you're getting a refresh, but do you feel that perhaps this is ill-judged and you could lose the Red Wall as a result of the way Boris has been deposed?
No, I don't believe that, actually. I believe, first of all, I believe the candidate I'm backing, which is Liz Truss, has that ability to steer the ship between the Liberal Democrat facing south and the Red Wall in the north. I mean, she went to a comprehensive school in Leeds, in Roundhay, worked her way through to Oxford. It's literally that backstory of she worked hard, she's got the intelligence, brought it forward. She understands the north. She understands the south. And I think that, after 20 years sort of on the front line of general elections, I say there was absolute honesty. The 2019 manifesto was the best I ever stood on. And I think what's important is that the new leader actually grabs that manifesto and gets on with delivering it, despite all the challenges we've had. But by clearing away this constant sniping, which was just, we weren't getting any traction at all. And it came to a point, I think, in the last couple of weeks where there wasn't a single interview done which ever talked about why the minister had gone on the radio to talk about it. It was all about the latest crisis in Boris. And of course, again, we've seen another set of allegations come out this weekend. That's where, unfortunately, we got to where we are. I'm disappointed we've got to this stage.
What makes you think?
He delivered a lot. He delivered a lot.
Yeah, he did. So what makes you think, though, so you're backing Liz Truss, just say she gets in, what makes you think they won't do the same to her? Because it was mostly the mainstream media, it was a lot of the established media who seemed to be... It felt, in my view, just from my view, it felt like it was a Remain saying it, because it seems through underneath everything there's been this sort of undertone of people not getting what they wanted when it came to the whole Brexit vote. And now, of course, Liz Truss was a Brexiteer. What makes you think that if she then takes over, whether, so you're going to change the leader, we're not going to have a general election, she takes over, that they're not going to start hounding her in the same way?
So I think that there's a few issues here. I think, first of all, that Liz was delivering when she was at the Department for Trade on the post-Brexit trade deals. And then she's moved into the Foreign Office, where she has shown herself to be more than credible on the world stage. I actually lead the UK delegation to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, so especially at this moment in time, you can see just how involved I would be with that, and people highly respect her. And I think, you answer your question directly, she's been delivering on the result of Brexit. But I have to be honest, Nana, I think Brexit is a ridiculous word now. It's a word of history. We've done Brexit. We've left the European Union. What this is all about now is developing our trade policies, how we work in the world. And one thing the pandemic has done is shown that the traditional world supply chains, the world supply markets have broken down. That's one of the things causing inflation. And this is what Liz is saying. There's an opportunity here to grab the freedom Brexit's given us to develop supply side reform and actually take those advantages. I actually believe that if we do that, a bit like when we did union reforms in the 80s and that, you'll find a lot of the world, probably including the EU, will follow us because we have to change everything.
Well, listen, Alec, thank you very much. I hope that those who are really pressing against this will share your optimism. That's Alex Shelbrooke. He's an MP. He's for the Conservative Elmet and Rothwell. Thank you very much. Right, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue with our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time for a general election? We'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 5:34. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The race for Prime Minister is heating up, with the International Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt announcing her leadership bid. 9 MPs are now in the running, with Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi and Transport Secretary Grant Shapps putting their names forward yesterday. They were joined by former Health Secretaries Jeremy Hunt and Sajid Javid, who've both promised to cut corporation tax. Earlier, Mr Hunt explained why he's throwing his hat in the ring.
Mr Hunt, what made you join the race?
Because I want to do a great job for my country, that's why. And the sun is shining.
How are you going to unite the country?
Well, sort out our big economic and international problems.
At least 15 people have been killed after Russian rockets hit a 5-storey residential block in Ukraine. Dozens are feared to be trapped under the rubble after the building collapsed in the Donetsk region. Rescuers are scrambling to find survivors. Almost 150 people have been intercepted crossing the Channel so far this weekend. Children were among those who were rescued from 3 small boats. It brings the total number of crossings this year to over 13,000, almost double last year's figure. And some breaking news this hour. Serbia's Novak Djokovic has won his 7th Wimbledon title. The world number 1 beat Australian Nick Kyrgios in 4 sets, securing victory in a tiebreak. This is Novak's 21st Grand Slam win. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Back to Nana in just a minute.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good afternoon. Crikey, it's been busy today, hasn't it? It's coming up to 39 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. If you just joined us, welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget, you can also catch up with the show on YouTube. Right, so it is time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time for a general election? The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says it is. He's vowed to beat any candidate chosen to be the next Tory leader in an election and promises a fresh start for the country. Let's have a quick look at what you've already been saying. Daryl Farnsworth says, absolutely not. But when it does happen, the Labour Party will still be unelectable because they should be so much further ahead in the polls now. Daisy says, yes, if Boris had to go, it should be everyone who steps in, not the day of MPs. Sarah Davis, hello, Sarah, how are you doing? She says, yes, we need to vote Boris back in. The public did not vote for the others. A lot of people echoing the same sentiment. Let's see what my panel make of that, though. Let's welcome on board a broadcaster and columnist, Lizzie Cundy, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Right, I'm going to start with you, Danny. Danny, general election, Keir Starmer says he's ready and he thinks he's going to win.
I'm with the MP, Alec, I forget his surname. Although he's from a very strong constituency, 17,000 majority, so he can speak quite nonchalantly. The Red Wall, I believe, they are in trouble if there was an election. I also agree with them about the fact that politics and the prime ministerialship is more than just the one man. There is a system behind it which we now have to rely on, and I accept that. I think if there was a general election, I think there'd be loads of people who would want one. Again, the MP said no one wants it. Brenda from Bristol, all of that. Well, that's just not true. There's quite a few people, percentage-wise, who would want one. I personally wouldn't be calling for one at this moment because I've got faith and confidence in the way that the Tories are going to put a Prime Minister up front, and then the Tory party members will be able to vote for it. And then let that individual, man or woman, let that individual bed in or maybe hit the ground running and see how she or he performs. And then you can say, look, this is like a sinking ship. We demand a general election. I think you need to give it time and give it a go.
But they should have given Boris time, really. I mean, we had a pandemic, we had loads of things. He never really got stuck in. What do you think, Liz?
No, well, look, no, of course, I don't want a general election at all. And, of course, Keir Starmer does want one.
No, I don't think he does. I think he's saying it.
Listen, I think he's got too big for his boots.
No,
I really do. But there is no way. Look, the people have voted for a Conservative manifesto, and it's up to them to decide who the leader's going to be. And all this chaos and noise. It's not forever. It's just now until we get the new Prime Minister.
I don't believe him. He's just saying that to make it sound like he feels strong and that he's going to win when he knows full stop. And most people are saying that even if he did have a general election, I still think that the Conservative Party would win it because the Labour Party are so unpopular.
I think the new leader, forgive me, I think the new leader should definitely tweak the 2019 manifesto. Now, part of that manifesto was to achieve net zero by 2050, and people said, that's a great idea, how can you argue against that? But then all of a sudden, the gritty reality of how you achieve a net zero by 2050 kicks in. You've got 25% green levy tax on your energy bills. My energy bills are £300 a month. 25% of
That's
that could
50
be...
quid up from the last time. What are you doing? You've got cooking all day and all night.
You've got a great memory. I think I did say 250 last time, but I think in October, when the cap's off, I think it's going to be 300 quid. So I hope people can just sort of draw from the energy of the working class man and woman away from North London. Just absorb the energy, because people, they want a net zero, but they don't expect to be bankrupt in order to achieve it.
I don't know whether people do want a net zero.
Yeah, that's right.
I actually think that if a candidate comes along and says that we're going to stop this net zero nonsense, I think that will be even a hotter ticket than the taxes. Because if you do that, I think that's what people want. Because I'm sick and tired of... I appreciate Quentin was talking all about electric cars. He told me how he only had to wait 20 minutes whilst it was charging. And I thought, well, that's all right. If you're a single man in one of those cars, I think it's the Tesla ones where you can charge it anywhere.
Supercharged.
And it would have cost you almost 50 grand. That's fine.
But they're so expensive.
But no, first of all, A, I can't afford one of those.
Yeah.
B, I can't afford 20 minutes. I'm a busy woman.
Yeah.
And C, well, I just think they're too heavy, and I don't want one.
I'd love a politician to rip the net zero thing up, have the balls to do it. Lizzie,
Please
forgive me, I
stop the
interrupted
bicycle lanes, though, please. I got stuck in traffic the other night with those bicycle lanes. I mean, London is like gridlock most of the time. It's a nightmare. But just saying about this infighting with the Conservative Party, it is going to stop.
Do you think?
It is going to stop. It has to stop, because this is where people have lost faith. And the thing is, what I'm thinking is, who would Keir Starmer really dread to be against for the next...
All of them, any of them, any of them.
And who would he might want? I mean, who isn't very good at the sparring? I mean, that's what...
He would want... I think he would probably want someone like... I think Tom Tugendhat is quite a divisive person in that... I don't mean him personally, I mean as in some people really like him and some people hate him, and he would divide things quite substantially. So I don't think that he would be somebody that could unite people. I think someone who could unite people more would probably be someone, even though he behaved like Brutus in Julius Caesar. I would say Nadine Zahawi would probably be the one. But then they all behaved like
But I mean, how can you, as a country, have your faith in him when he was made? He supported the Prime Minister, was the new Chancellor with 24 hours.
But he also voted to leave, and he's also done a pretty good job as Education Secretary.
Isn't it curious, finally, isn't it curious that the bunny boilers who loathe Conservatives on TV and radio, that they haven't reacted to the lineup? The lineup is of, I think, 5 women, 6 blokes. There are people of different colours on there, and they're the bunny boilers who want to paint Conservatives as racist to the very root.
Well, that's interesting, because I was listening on the radio, and it was like, oh, but when, it's somebody of colour and this and that. I thought to myself, that's interesting, because I didn't actually think about that. No. And it's interesting that's been brought in by, it feels like, I don't know whether it's mainstream or whatever, but another narrative, whereas nobody is really talking about that. I'm more interested in what they can offer.
Yes.
I don't care what colour they are. I couldn't give 2 hoots.
No.
I'm not interested. What are they saying? Is it true? And do I trust them? The answer is no for all of them, by the way. But who do I trust the most out of those, all of whom I trust the least, basically?
Who is that? You haven't told me who you want.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You like?
Oh, come on.
Well, OK, look, as I said, out of all of them that I think would do a decent enough job would probably be someone like Nadine Zahawi. But then I don't like the way he behaved towards Boris at the end. I thought that was terrible. I don't think Sajid Javid has the gravitas, in a sense. He hasn't got the charisma. To me, he's the only one that has a mix of a level of charisma, a level of energy and strength and power that would bring people towards him. That's what I think.
But I know I keep going on about him, but Tom Tugendhat, he has fought for our country. He's dodged more bullets than I've had hot dinners.
Don't mention hot dinners. It's that time of the day.
Don't
mention hot dinners.
But, he's got the leadership skills, and people keep saying, well, he hasn't been in the cabinet, but, look at what he's achieved in his life.
You don't need to have been.
You don't need to have a...
Tony Blair wasn't in the cabinet.
No, red...
Well, look,
David Cameron wasn't in the cabinet.
No, exactly. Or Keir Starmer.
All the losers that you've listed. Interesting, right? Yeah. Well, that gives me confidence. This show is nothing, however, without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voice onto the show. Your chance to tell us what you think about the topics we're discussing. Where should we go? Should we go to Grimsby? Is that where Mrs Thatcher was from?
It's grim up there.
Was it Grimsby where she was from? Yeah. Let's go to Alan McNeely. Hello, Alan. Thank you very much for joining us.
How are you? OK?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. You're looking well there. Yeah, enjoying the sunshine, I hope. Right, so...
Absolutely.
What do you think? General election time, should we demand that they call one, even though they don't listen to anything we say?
No, I don't think it's necessary. The Tories were elected on their manifesto. They have a large majority. It's unfortunate that they've decided to change their leader, but that shouldn't mean that we need another election. What would concern me is if the person who came in veered away dramatically from what the original manifesto pledges were. So if they can come in and pretty much stick to that, but I agree with your panel member there saying that they really need to think about the net zero target in a major way before they drag us all into poverty.
Yeah, I hear you. And do you think that if we did call a general election, that the Tories, if we did it now, that Tories would win?
It's possible. I don't think the Labour Party are anywhere near ready for a general election. And although they're obviously going to call one and they're going to call Boris a squatter and so on, because for 3 years they haven't had any policies. And they still haven't got any policies.
Well, that's the thing.
Their whole opposition has been focused on attacking Johnson, and they haven't really done anything else. And I don't think they've fooled anyone by Stammer suddenly wrapping himself in a Union Jack when all the people on his front bench are Corbyn supporters, and probably 75% of the Labour Party hate this country, hate its history, hate its culture, and really... He hasn't changed that. He might say that he's changed that, but I don't think the reality is there in the people that you see in the party. So therefore, I think it's a bit of a smoke and mirrors that he's trying to play, for want of a better word.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Smoke and mirrors. Alan McNeely, thank you very much for joining me. He's there in Grimsby. It wasn't Grimsby that Mrs Thatcher was from. It was another place beginning with G. Where was it? Grantham. Bye-bye, Alan. See you later.
That's why I drive a 183-mile round trip.
Grantham. That's the one. That's the
to
one.
correct you.
Right, well, today I've been asking, is it time for a general election? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. What does Alfred think? He said, why bother now? Boris has gone. There is no one to vote for in any party. By the way, it's refreshing to have a news station that asks your opinion rather than tells you what it should be. Thank you for that. That's a good point. Chris says, hi, Nana, I agree with you. A lot of people like me voted Tory because of Boris. Only 2 weeks ago, my local Tory MP confirmed to me he supported Boris and then he resigns. I was fuming and I have let him know I won't vote Tory again, and as they are all traitors, liars, out for their own career. See, that is the thing. But unfortunately, Chris, otherwise you let in Keir Starmer. Right, moving on to another story that caught my eye this week. Take a look at this. Andrea Jenkins was caught flipping off activists outside Downing Street just before the Prime Minister's resignation. She has since apologised and stated that she is only human. Right, let's see what my panel think of that. Joining me now is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Yeah, well, she flick the bird or whatever you call it.
Good for her.
Good
strong, powerful woman.
What are you talking about?
Look, she's not deranged. She hasn't got, like, some sort of physical Tourette's. She would have been reacting to some sort of verbal hostility. So, and it's only the bird.
Don't do that here.
Excuse me.
Oh, can you not pixelate
No,
that?
you can't.
Apologise.
No, I'm very sorry.
It's
no,
only
but she's in a job of position. You cannot behave like that. I'm sorry. You really cannot behave like that, no matter what anyone says.
When was the last time you flicked the bird?
And
about a second ago.
he just did it. So I hope you were aiming that at me.
When was the last time you did that?
I did it in jest, I think, to someone, but it's to a friend, you know, not meaning it. I just think it's really wrong to do that. You cannot do that when you're in a senior position. I think it's totally wrong.
What about you, Dan?
I would go one further. I'd have used both hands.
What?
I would have done. I'd have flipped two birds.
He's talking about food again.
He's talking about... I hope he's not talking about us.
I can tell you the last time I flipped the bird.
I bet you do it regularly. Road rage.
You know it. Yesterday when somebody did something bad and I was in my C1.
Oh.
But luckily I wear a hat, don't wear my wig glasses. And
what happened? What did they do?
Never recognised me. I look like Inspector Clouseau.
What did they do?
Well, they were tailgating and they thought they'd come up my behind and there was a camera and I'm like, it's 50. I'm not going to move aside because it's 50. There's a speed camera about 2 seconds ahead. Why don't you go ahead? So I flipped the bird and they overtook me on the inside. Then were zooming down and I saw the flashing lights of the camera.
Were you in the middle lane?
No, I was in the side lane. But it was a double...
It sounds like you're in the wrong lane.
No, it's in a dual carriageway.
Oh, Nana!
No, it's a dual carriageway.
So you're in the right-hand lane?
No, in the right-hand lane, but...
Oh,
but hang on, but
bad driving.
No,
but it's very easy
but
to
it
go when
goes
you're
off to
driving.
so you're going
I
in this lane
see.
because it's a filter lane that goes off to the right. So I was in the right lane.
I'm not sure.
No, I was in the right lane.
You don't want road
You're not-
rage. You
weren't
don't want to
there.
start that off.
You'd not be sure. You weren't there, Danny.
I can't believe you just did that on live TV,
Right,
by
stop
the way.
talking. Right, it's time for Supplement Sunday. Where do I get these two from? It's the part of the show where me and my panel look at some of the other stories making the papers today. Joining me, of course, broadcaster Danny Kelly and also Lizzie Cundy. Right, Danny, what's your story from the Telegraph?
It's a great story. Dog walkers caught without poo bags could be fined £100 as local council gives wardens new powers to challenge pet owners taking their pooches for a stroll. Now, I'm a big fan of this because there are so many irresponsible dog owners that take their dog for a morning stroll, knowing full well that they're going to empty their bowels and they have no intention of actually picking up the contents of their bowels. And so the council employee is going to say, excuse me, missus, have you got anything to pick up the dog poo? And if she can't produce anything, then he's going to say, it is a £100 fine. And if the person said, yeah, but I've already picked up the dog poo, I would suggest that the guy's going to say, so where was it and where have you put the dog poo in the bag? OK, let's go back to the bin. Show me that poo.
I want proof.
I want to see the turd.
Oh, dear. Don't. No, there's nothing worse.
That's OK. That's fine, that
I
one.
think that's language.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just in case anyone wants.
No, but there's nothing worse than treading in that stuff and then not knowing and bringing it
I've once
home.
challenged someone who didn't pick up the dog poo. I said,
Really?
you're going to pick that up, mate?
Yeah.
And he picked it up, and then he came... I was outside my mate's house in Coventry on a bit of sort of council lawn, and he knocked on the door, and he said, would you have said that to someone 6'6" and 25 stone? And he confronted me, but he picked it up. That's the... Kids go blind by picking up dog poo.
It's disgusting. Well, it makes me angry. Well, listen, I've got a story for you. Professor Julian Thomas from the University of Manchester is leading the effort to locate the mythical resting place of King Arthur. Now, numerous sites across Britain lay claim to be the tomb of the legendary king, with over 20 locations being investigated by Professor Thomas's team. So, what do you think? Do you think Arthur really existed? Is this something that you would... do you think Arthur existed?
Oh, I'd like to think so, wouldn't you?
I think it's a mythical... Danny, after the dog poo, I'm afraid.
Yeah, he's still...
Didn't he pull a sword out of a stone or something? Was that him? Or was that King Arthur? We're talking about King Arthur. Did he exist? I don't know.
Well, anyway, well, if he did, maybe he's got lots of kids like this next story, because this is another one I got, and this is about a woman who was with a surprisingly large family. An American woman has found out that her dad was a prolific sperm donor. Krista Bilton then decided to find her extended family, and she's now written a memoir about meeting her 35 new siblings called A Normal Family. Do you think 35 siblings is too many?
Gosh, Christmas would be expensive, wouldn't it? Just think about that. That is
Buy them
incredible.
Nothing. Danny?
I come from an Irish Catholic family, and my father had, I think, 6 or 7 siblings.
Wow.
Yeah, which is wow now, but wasn't wow back in the day. Some other Irish Catholic families had like 9, 10 and 11 kids.
Well, my dad was one of 32.
Yes!
That's right.
Incredible!
Well, there's a couple of twins, a couple of wives in there, but it was, one where you can have lots of wives anyway. There was, I think, 2 wives. But they knew each other, obviously.
Why would
they're
anyone
friends.
want 2 wives?
No, exactly. I think it's madness. But yes, it's 2 wives, all living in the same household and everything. Yeah, 32. And when I go to weddings and things, there's about 500 people who look a little bit like me, not quite me. I look the best, better than all of them.
That's incredible.
Right, on today's show, we've been asking about taxes and whether you trust any of our politicians. Our Twitter poll said 67% of you say Liz Truss, 10% of you say Sajid Javid, and 15% say Rishi Sunak. Only 7 for Jeremy Hunt. That's gone down. Thank you so much to my fabulous panel. Danny Kelly, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much indeed.
And also Lizzie Cundy, lovely to see you again. And also big thank you to you at home for your company and for joining me again. I'll see you on Friday at 4. But now I'll leave you with the weather. Enjoy.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry, warm and sunny for most, although skies will be a little cloudier in Northern Ireland. Let's take a look at the details. After a hot and sunny day, it will stay warm this evening in southwest England, with plenty of late sunshine and a gentle breeze. Temperatures will still be in the low 20s to start the evening. It will also be a fine end to the day in the southeast, with plenty of warm evening sunshine. There will also be a keen breeze around the coast, but light winds elsewhere. A fine end to the day in Wales. Warm sunshine will continue in the south, but elsewhere it will feel a little cooler in a sea breeze. Late sunshine will continue across the Midlands this evening, After a hot day, temperatures will still be rather warm as the sun sets. Dry and sunny weather will continue this evening in northeast England. It will feel cooler around the coasts, but inland it will stay warm. Some late sunshine will continue in southern Scotland, but there will be more in the way of cloud across the west, where it will feel cooler too. A fine end to the day in Northern Ireland with some patchy cloud and sunny spells. Temperatures will still be in the high teens during the evening time. Staying dry tonight across the UK with clear skies for many, but a little cloudier around northern coasts. A mild night with temperatures in double figures, and that's how the weather is shaping up overnight until tomorrow morning.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.